And at that point, Debbie, I'll hand over to you because you're looking at the murkiness of the pond and the language around migration.
I am, yes. It is a big subject. And what is migration? Well, it's movement. That's essentially what it is. And for migrant workers, skilled workers coming into the UK, we've actually seen a huge decline. So the numbers have fallen from 143,000 in July 2023 to 91,300 in July 2024. From August the 1st to August the 7th, so this is very recent data, there have been 736 arriving in small boats. Now, there's even a definition of a small boat, so that doesn't count the many that come in on bigger boats or come in on cruise liners or in vehicles. So let's just go to the United Nations again for their primary purpose at the end of the day is to maintain international peace and security. And here's the UN Refugee Agency, and they're looking at global trends. So we've got 117.3 million displaced because of conflict, war, violence, or disturbing of public order. That's 1 in 5 are displaced, with 3.6 million new claims at the end of 2023. That's globally. So what are the solutions? So the solutions are, what they're saying is that they're actually returning people to the countries of origin. 6.1 million, they say, with 158,700 resettled. But there are 32,200 stateless people who received citizenship. But what is a refugee? So I had to go to the International Migration Law to look at the glossary because it is an absolute minefield. This is number 34. Let's go and have a look at, I've just literally scraped the top of the iceberg. I've got a few descriptions here because there are so many. So let's look at the first slide where you've got aliens, asylum seekers. I won't go into the meaning of all of them because I'm just showing a few. There are so many more. I mean, literally probably 50 or 60 more. So we've got alien, asylum seekers, climate migration. We've got climate migrants, migrants in vulnerable situations, displaced people. And then even more, we look at refugees, refugee prima facie, refugee sur place, refugee 1951 convention, refugee mandate. So confused. I wouldn't expect you not to be, to be honest. So what is a migrant? Who is a migrant? So I had to go to the UN again to look at the definition of migrant, and you can see actually that this is an umbrella term. So there's nothing that's defined under international law at all. Very confusing, very mixed picture. So then I went to Amnesty International and I wanted to look at the difference between refugees, asylum seekers and migrants, because all of these terms get confused. So if we look at the next slide, it says that really we're looking at people on the move. So a migrant and refugee, this is a term that's used interchangeably, but there is a legal difference. So what are the differences? So a refugee, they've fled their own country because they say they're at risk of serious harm and they have a right to international protection. However, an asylum seeker has also fled a country because they feel they're at risk, but they haven't been legally recognised as a refugee and are awaiting a decision. So let's look and see what a migrant is, because you can see how confusing this picture is. So a migrant is someone staying outside their country of origin. This means that people, Mark Carney, in fact, anybody can be a migrant or an economic migrant, as we'll come on to see. But if you're coming over to this country or any other country to work or study or join family, then you're classified as a migrant. But there's another type of migrant. And I had to go to another article in The Conversation to find out what the difference is between an economic migrant, because I'm sure you're all saying, oh, but there are economic migrants, and you'd be right. And yet again, if we look into the conversation a bit more, an economic migrant, again, is an umbrella term for people moving. And this is where they use the example of someone like Mark Carney can be an economic migrant, just the same as somebody that's jumping in the back of a lorry or is in a small boat. So migrants that claim asylum have to reach this country before they apply for refugee status. So you can see what they have to do. They have to actually be here, to claim asylum. So let's go and look at the UK Gov and let's see what asylum seekers actually get. And I'm just going to run through these very quickly because there's a very handy website that I'll show you in a minute that's got a very good resume of everything. So the UK Government Asylum Support Overview. So what can you get on top of your children being educated and health, NHS? So the next slide will show you that you can get somewhere to live, or you can get a cash allowance. Now you can have a flat, house, hostel, bed and breakfast, hotel, as we've seen, whichever accommodation is available. You get £49.18 a week for each person, or if the accommodation provides meals, that's £8.86. And of course, you do get extra if you're a young mum, or if you're pregnant, or if you've got children. And that's just a little bit of information there. So you can see that if you're pregnant and you're near your due date, you can actually get a £300 one-off maternity grant. But even if you've been refused asylum, it still means that you can stay and you can appeal. And this goes on and on and on. It can span years. But I did find a very handy guide after the OSIP. Sorry, yes, we'll look at the eligibility. So, of course, anyone can ask for asylum, anybody. But then I went to facts4eu.org, very handy website, actually. This is Brexit Facts. They're a think tank. And they've done, on the next slide, a list of annual benefits. So they say that a family of 4 with one child under 1, the total, I won't go into the individual sums because you can see them quite clearly there, but the annual benefits a family could see would total up to £14,698 a year. And they say they don't pay rent, income tax, national insurance contributions, council tax. I'm not quite sure where the mobile phone comes from. And of course, they don't pay prescription. But they do make a very important observation in this report. And the observations are on the next slide. And that says that this is really a report. Their report is about illegal migrants. They want to make that quite clear. These are boat economic migrants is what they're saying. So if you are a migrant and you're coming into this country, what kinds of help can you get? Well, you can get quite a bit of help, especially if you're LGBTQI plus, and if you've experienced sexual-based violence and abuse. What do they provide? Well, they provide practical and emotional support and also legal advice, which I could imagine would be very handy for somebody that's just arrived into the country. The next slide is also more support. I think you've got the next slide there for migration. Oh, sorry, those are the funders. Yes, those are the funders of the LBGTQ. So you can see this is National Lottery, Barrow Cadbury Trust, and a bunch of others. And there is other support as well. So the next slide will show you that there's a Migrants' Rights Network charity. So plenty of help for people if they do need them. But I just want to end this segment on quite a pertinent piece, I think, because I'm sure many of you will be saying, oh, yes, but where are these migrants going and what are they trained in doing? And we mustn't forget that the UK has given the UN peacebuilding crisis a boost to help prevent humanitarian crisis and conflicts. They've actually boosted it by £10 million and a further £2 million to build a national capacities for conflict prevention. With 160 million that they've invested, the UK government's invested since 2006, it actually makes the United Kingdom one of the biggest donors for the UN peacekeeping. But we'll talk more about it in extra, I'm sure.
Thank you for that, Debbie. Well, there we are, a complete soup of terminology, so many different definitions. Think of the complexity for the civil service trying to even deal with this number of people, over 600,000. This is deliberately created chaos. This is not accidental. This is a policy created by the government in order to bring people into the country and to deceive the existing population, however long you've been here. And I want to say to our audience that some time ago I was able to talk to members of the immigrant population in this country, and they themselves, of course, recognised that you could not have unlimited immigration into this country at this level, because they suffer, their children suffer, and their grandchildren suffer. And of course, they are perfectly capable of working that out for themselves, as anybody else can within the UK.